started out in forestry because of family history of forest land, and my dad and my uncle had a building supply company. And so my first venture into that was with a broom and some dust down at the end of the day when I was maybe 12 years old. And I started gradually going into doing work because the family had come into some land, timberland. My dad kind of took it over as manager, but he wasn't a forester, so he hired foresters, to one in particular in Camden to do the work. So I had a strong interest in that, but I also had a strong interest in engineering. And so when I applied to Clemson and heading to Clemson, I was heading to an engineering school. But I was still debating as of the last day. And so my first day at Clemson, I was able to change majors and go into forestry. I had an Air Force commission on graduation, June 1963, and I got a deferment to go to grad school. They only allowed me 1 year deferment. So I had taken some summer courses, and I also took some more. I took some undergrad courses in business as well as math, and so I was trying to orient myself in that direction as much as I could. I took accounting, for example, here in Sumter. It was Clemson Extension at Sumter at the time. Took an accounting course there, first semester accounting. So I was kind of preparing myself, so I was able to finish the master's in a year. And then I went in, as soon as I finished that, went in that service. I was thinking of going into the business and consulting, because I enjoyed working with the consultant that I worked with, and part-time in the summers. I really enjoyed what I was doing. I felt like I could provide a service to landowners. I had a little bit different philosophy about it, because I kind of, on my business side, I think I felt like, I could diversify a little bit more than what was the typical forestry service in that day. And my dad passed away about that time, and so I came back here, and I had to kind of pick up where he was doing on that. So I spent most of the first year, was a year and a half, 2 years, in doing that, and I continued to assist on a contract basis by then with the forester that was working with the company. Okay. So I did that, and then gradually kind of branched out and did some work on my own, and eventually picked up. He was about ready to retire, so I picked up most of his clients from that. So that gave me a kind of a good base in about 4 counties. AFM was Bartow Shaw and Associates, what it started out as. Because when I hired the first employee was a Clemson grad back in, that was, I really technically started about 1966 when I first started going out and doing on my own some. And then it was 74 when 75 when I hired first forester. So I was on my own for about 8 or 9 years. I had a good friend that a real tall fellow, a dentist, and he started having really bad knee problems. And we had a group of us that were in college together, not all foresters. In fact, I was the only forester in the group, actually. And I knew he would have a hard time turkey hunting, getting up and down off the ground. Yeah. So I went to fix up a ground blind, and it had a swivel chair in it, right by a field, but it was also by a stream. And so close to a stream, and I guess I hit there in April when the moccasin had been up underneath it, and when I started banging on putting camo up around it, it woke him up. Oh, and so when I went to step out, hit me from behind, but luckily hit the top. I didn't have snake boots on that day because I wasn't expecting anything like that. I usually pretty careful about snake boots, but hit the top of my boot. Wow. And I didn't get anything. I didn't realize it because when it hit me, it felt like somebody hit me with a baseball bat. Well, it tore my Achilles tendon in half. I had to get surgery. Fast forward a few years, we had actually one of my partners, Roy Belts, who was primary contact with a client from St. Louis, and he called because they had a Midwestern group. They were going to Russia because they had been invited there to go by the ambassador to Russia then was Bob Strauss, a Democrat that President Bush Sr. had appointed. So that was kind of an interesting, but went into St. Petersburg. Then we had a 13-hour train trip from St. Petersburg to Petrosavodsk. And then they took us in to a hotel adjacent to what they call their Parliament building. And we went to this place. They said, we'll be back in an hour. Just get settled. We're going to take you out to tour the countryside and whatnot. This is on a Sunday. And so it was, we went up to this one area, and they had, it was 7, I think there was 7 what we consider artesian wells, water just coming out of the ground. Mm-hmm. It had a different flavor. Mm-hmm. And they were little tin cups at each well. And now one of our hosts, he was a big bear hunter. That was, I mean, he was one of the that was one of his favorite pastimes, bear hunting. But he says, and he reaches in his coat, and it was cold. He reaches in his coat pocket, and he says, and this is Sunday morning, keep in mind. We've been on a 13-hour train ride right before that. He says, I always like to drink these were healing waters. Okay. These were healing, and people came there. In fact, Peter the Great, that was his favorite place, and he built a spa-type place. All of his officers had to go spend a certain amount of time at this place and drink this water coming out of the ground. And we could see the spa-type place up on the top of the mountain up there. And they had a little museum for him. He was actually, learned a lot about him. He was actually a little woodworking. And he made, this chair he had made, and it's kind of fascinating. It was totally unprotected. I mean, just a little rope around. Anybody could have taken it. You can imagine something Peter the Great made up, what value that would be. Wow. But anyway, the guy, our guide says, when I'm drinking, and of course, like I say, he had these tin cups. We didn't have anything else. There's a tin cup. Said, you should drink this water. And of course, that was our first meeting with him. So I guess we should drink the water. They tell us. So he said, I always chase mine with a little vodka. And Roy and I looked at each other and said, yeah, I think we will too. Because we're looking at how many people have drank. That's before COVID, of course, but I mean, even at that, how many more people have been drinking out of the same tin cup? So we decided a little vodka would kill whatever was on there. So that was our Sunday morning vodka. When Hugo came along, and one of the guys had his pickup truck, we got a tree went across it and just kind of crushed it like that. It was a V-shaped pickup truck. One of them, the same one actually, was doing a prescribed burning and parked his truck on the opposite side of the highway from burning. Was working out there, and the fire jumped the highway and burned his truck up. So I mean, all kind of things can happen like that. You have to kind of keep humor, and we had always had a great group. Had a lot of fun working together. Well, it's changed faces a lot. I think we have to keep up technology-wise. And I think we are making strides in that now, especially over the last 10 years with inventory in particular. So ownership has changed dramatically. And, we had our issues with the industry over the years as consultants with some of the landowner assistance programs and all, and that sort of thing. When I was involved with the South Carolina Society of Consulting Foresters and the ACF, and that. But at the same time, when I would hear some of the environmental community criticize the industry on monocultures and this sort of thing, I'd also point out that they are permanent owners, and they put a lot of money in research and development, and they're doing a lot of the right things. Whereas when you don't have that capability and you don't have that strategic mindset of why you're owning timberland, then a lot of that research and development falls by the wayside, which it has. And I think there's a positive sign. I was on a conference call late last week with Duke School of Forestry, Duke School of Environment, and there's a lot more focus now on what the forest can contribute to global warming issue, and what wood can contribute is carbon sinks. I mean, because in my opinion, wood had been discriminated against, but by people looking to save the world, but without consideration of the fact that you put more wood in a building, you got a carbon sink that you can't. And I think there's a lot of recognition more. I was real pleased with the conference call where these people had more of the environmental aspect in mind, but yet they were recognizing this after all these years. Well, I think they're both needed. First of all, they're not competing avenues. I mean, SAF, you think of as more, that's where the research is coming from. And I think that SAF has done a really good job of focusing on where the needs are, and providing that through the meetings and through the seminars and everything else. On the ACF side of it is really helping the consultants, apply and provide a better service to their clients. First of all, you look at the cost benefit, and it's reasonable. The cost is reasonable. I don't think anybody can argue with that. I mean, it's in the business on either score. But I think that you have to have a love for the profession, and the fact that you want to be the best you can, and you want to represent the profession. One thing I have to put in a plug for my family, my wife in particular. My wife was always there. I think one of her favorite compliments about somebody was they're a team player.